Hey everyone, welcome to November. It's crazy, I know. We're weeks into the new NBA season, and it feels like there was never any off season, right? Now we have real stories, real stuff to talk about, and that includes still Ime Udoka, the story that won't go away, although it seems like maybe he is pretty soon. We'll get into it. Adam Kaufman, Evan Valenti, we're always here, and our special guest today, who I think the last time that he joined us, which was not that long ago, by the way, Ime Udoka was still the head coach of this team, and that is Gary Washburn of the Boston Globe, good friend of this program, good friend of CLNS, part of the A-List podcast as well. Gary, how are you, man?
Good, guys. How's it going?
Good. Listen, there's lots to sort of a lot on the bone to chew on as it relates to the Celtics and their 4-3 start. I promise to the people out there, we're going to get there. And if you're just tuning in, you don't want to hear about Ime, fast forward a little bit and we will talk about the team, but we're going to start with all of this Ime stuff. You've been writing about it. Your colleague Adam Himmelsbach has been writing about it. I thought he had very, very interesting comments from Marcus Smart and Jaylen Brown about Ime with respect to, obviously what's going on with these reports, this seeming inevitability that he's going to land with the Brooklyn Nets this season, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, to start as the head coach of this team to replace the parting of the ways with Steve Nash. He was fired. We all know how that went down. And so Ime now is going to be taking over this team. Marcus saying, this sucks. I don't understand it. How do we, this guy led us to the finals last year. How are we letting him just go to a cheap competitor? He's good enough to be coaching there, but he can't coach us. We wish he was still here. Jaylen saying some facets of the same thing. And I get that, they love him. They respect him. He's, as I think one of them said, he's their brother. He's their friend. He's their, all of it. And they're happy for him on one hand and disappointed that he's gone on the other. But I hear or I read these comments and I think a little bit, Gary, that, they love Joe Mazzulla, the man, for sure. But do they love Joe Mazzulla, the head coach? Does Joe have total buy-in from his players, or is this sort of a cloud right here?
I think it's just kind of a level of confusion at this point. Obviously, many of the players, and I don't know all, don't know what exactly happened. And the question is it up to Brad and Wick to pull these guys into a room and say, these are the violations that Udoka committed. This is why we did not want him back. This is why he was suspended. This is what happened. Are they owed that? And I think they are. But then there's also a level of, legal issues that go on here. Are the Celtics allowed to talk about anything? I'm sure during the negotiations with Coach Udoka, lawyers were involved, and I'm sure the Celtics were not allowed legally to reveal what was in that investigation and exactly what he did. They could describe it, but they couldn't detail it publicly. So I think you have legal issues here. And I also think, okay, let's say you say, okay, well, let's tell the players, but tell the players not to tell anybody. Like, are they not going to tell their agent? The worst nightmare, the worst case scenario is Shams or Woj having details, according to The Athletic, according to ESPN, or even according to the Globe, these are the details of what all was in the investigation. Because we've all been waiting for more detailed information on what happened and we haven't gotten it. It's been 5-6 weeks now. So I think the Celtics are just I think they're legally bound to not saying anything. And I don't know if they trust their players because these guys do have relationships with their agents. Mm-hmm. What if they tell their families? Sure. They not, do you bring them all into a room and then do pinky swears that you won't say anything to anybody? These guys are going to tell their girlfriend, they're going to tell their wife, nothing. So I think there's a level of we want them to know, but we can't have this information circulate publicly. It might ruin Udoka, and I'm sure Udoka's representatives during the negotiations when they were figuring out the suspension said, you can describe violations of team policy, relationship, whatever. No, you're not going any further than that. So that's why I think everyone else around is like, well, what do you really do besides have a relationship with a coworker? Who doesn't, everybody, a lot of people do that. But I think that there's more information that can be revealed and probably should be to the players. But I don't think the Celtics want to go down that legal road and get their asses sued off for revealing this information, because all it takes is someone, because remember, guys, you have NBA reporters involved, and now you've got TMZ, you've got all, because he was dating and has a son with a high profile actress. So you got all these people like clamoring for information. So I think the Celtics are just being very, very protective, but they're going to have to say or do something, because it's a concern 6 weeks later when those guys are still like, we don't know what happened. And so nothing has been told to them, or not, they don't have peace of mind. So yeah, I understand them being a little bit upset. I understand them being like, oh, wait a minute, you're not even going to ask for a draft pick? Like, obviously the Celtics want to be done with Ime Udoka. Like, I just, whatever it was, okay? And you hear rumors and you have people hitting you up and, oh, this is what I heard he was doing. But whatever it was, besides the inappropriate relationship or the relationship with the coworker, they don't want him back. And I think this says that.
Do you think the players just, again, I'm going off of Marcus and Jalen's comments, do they genuinely believe that after all of this, he was going to be back? Or is this just something you say in an interview? Because I don't think any of the three of us ever thought Ime would be coaching this team again.
No, I didn't think he would, unless unless it was like a really poor season. And I think they like Mazzulla. I mean, obviously he's got some things to work out in terms of his style. We can talk about that later. The refusal to call timeouts when we all can see that
that's on the list.
The play is they're getting, it's a concern. Teams are making, so a 6-0 run turns into a 14-0 run when he could have stopped it at 6-0. But I think they like the direction the franchise is in. They like the positivity. They believe that the players are buying in. And I just think to bring him back next year and be like, okay, he still has a lot of explain to do to the Brooklyn media if he's hired there. He's not going to Minnesota or Charlotte or Indiana. He's going to New York. They're going to ask. They're going to be paid $6. There's going to be all these people there looking for information of what did you do?
You're going to ask. You must be keeping that calendar open. I bet you're going to be there.
Of course. And the question is, does he do I made a mistake and I have a comment, or does he do what I felt like I did? And there was a disagreement in my actions and there was a confusion there and I felt like I was wronged. Now, I don't think he'll say like he felt like he was wrong, but I'm sure he'll attempt to not say downplay. I don't know if he'll just be like, yeah, I was out of control. It's been 6 weeks. So you're in control now? Like the therapy sessions, all of that ended last week. You're cured from from your off the court appetite. So anyway, I think that the players are buying into Joe, but I also think they probably haven't had closure. And when you don't have closure, when you have to create your own closure, that's a difficult and long process. It's not going to be 6 weeks.
So this lack of closure, lack of clarity kind of to this whole issue, and this, to the players in the locker room, to many people who've been following the story. And this is not me saying like we are owed the details. I think they to some degree are, and like I'm not. I just, I'm curious like anybody else, obviously. But, the reports have just been so all over the map, so fascinating with all of this. And Woj, to his credit, was one of the first people at the very beginning of this thing to say, don't rule out the idea of Ime not only coaching again, but coaching somewhere else this year. Like that could happen. And then you have Matt Barnes, obviously, who's kind of in the media, I guess, saying like he may never coach again. Like what I've heard, like this he's done in this league. And so like that's sort of the range of opinions, of reports and everything that we've heard about this. And based on what is out there to this point, it makes you at least wonder, and I'm not saying it makes you wonder, has Boston overblown this thing at all as an organization? And I don't mean morally or ethically, because again, I don't know what went down, but professionally, with respect to Udoka's career, to even suspend him for this period of time, or let him go without compensation, as you talked about, to just want him off payroll and to be done. Is it, have whatever these transgressions are been potentially, is this at all short-sighted on Boston's part, given that this guy took you to the NBA Finals last year?
You would think that's a question to ask, Adam, but I also think he led you to the finals. It's worked out. They must. I don't think they wanted to get rid of him. I don't think that they were like looking for an excuse. They're not coming off, Adam, a 500 season in a first round elimination where there was like, you know what, this wasn't working anyway, and now he's acted up. Let's make a move. Like I think they really, really wanted to keep him. I think there's a high level of disappointment in the organization because of the faith they put in him and the power they allowed him to have, and how it was eventually effective, and how they were 2 wins from a championship. So I don't think that it was. I don't know if it was overblown, but I do think when you don't give any information, it leads for people to think that it was, especially when Brooklyn is like, "Oh, we'll take you." An organization that has had, a ridiculous amount of upheaval from last year to this year to last week to yesterday. Like the Nets are a mess. So I do think that shows the desperation of the Nets, because, this is a situation where, you have women involved, right? And you have discomfort amongst the organization for women. Like, the women in the Nets organization, are they going to feel protected? Do the women in the Celtics organization feel protected? This was something that is far more than just basketball. This wasn't, and I'm not downplaying, like, this wasn't like a DUI or something that was personal, right? Like he did harm to himself, and right. He could have done harm to someone else, but luckily he was stopped before he got to it. Something like that, where it was like misconduct, a personal thing. This is like relationships, conduct with women, superior, subordinate, all these issues that come in. And especially in these days and times where women, thank God, are fighting and getting more power and being able to say, hey, I'm not comfortable with how I'm being treated or how I'm being approached or how this person is speaking to me, or the physical, putting your hand on my shoulder or whatever the case may be. They have the right to say that now. 30, 40 years ago, they didn't. They were told to keep working, or they were told that's the way it is. Men will be men. Like, that doesn't happen. That's not the case anymore. So this is serious. And if I'm the Nets, I don't know, 5 weeks, they got enough good information that in 5 weeks they're ready to roll.
That's my question. What makes all this even more complicated is that the Celtics, this is bad enough for the Celtics to say, we don't want anything to do with this guy. We're going to put him on suspension for a year just as a placeholder until we figure out everything that's going on, right? Until we can really piece everything together. And the Nets, within, you want to call it an hour? You want to call it 2 hours? Went from, we're firing Steve Nash, to Ime's the leading candidate to be the new head coach of this team. Like, how does that happen, Gary? Or is it just one team saying we don't care about the because you can make the case that Nets don't care about the optics. Is it one team saying we don't care about the optics, we're just going to do this anyway because it's best for our basketball team in the season that we're trying to have? Or has this been in your mind, Gary, been brewing for a little bit, and the Nets been hanging around in the background?
Yeah, I think they've tried to vet him, done information, probably talked to him on many occasions and asked him like, hey man, and I'm sure they're going to tell him, listen, Ime, you got one strike. Like, I'm sure he'll sign some type of personal conduct policy that he'll have to adhere to. But I also think it's a sign of a general manager, and Sean Marks is trying to save his job. Like, Sean Marks was supposed to be this wonderkind new GM that was going to get the Nets, he was going to push the Nets to the top, the San Antonio pedigree and all this. And remember, he does know Ime from those San Antonio days. Mm-hmm. So he was supposed to do that. And he starts off by signing Kyrie and Kevin Durant. And then it's just been a disaster. You give Steve Nash a job, who's never been a head coach. You pass up on Udoka. Like the things that he's trying to save his job. And I think that the Nets are desperate, as they have been for the past decade, for recognition. They're desperate to compete because it's still a Knicks town. Regardless of what the Knicks do, New York is still a Knicks town. Nobody cares about the Nets, like outside in New York, pretty much. As Brian Lewis from the New York Post reported, like 6,000 season ticket packages. That's it. Like, lowest, like the second lowest in the league. Like, the Nets are cool when they're winning, and it sounded like a cool idea to move into Brooklyn, but they've been a disaster in terms of making that Garnett Pierce trade and trying to use Pierce and Garnett to run with the Heat, and roll with the Heat in 13 and 14. That wasn't going to work. And then the rebuild, and they were, trying to, they got D'Angelo Russell, and they drafted well, and they were getting guys, and they were playing hard, and they went to the first round under Atkinson, and then Durant comes in and goes, no, you need to get rid of this guy, and they bring it's a mess, because they want star power, but the stars have controlled things, and the player empowerment has gone haywire. It's still the case. You wouldn't touch Kyrie Irving with a 10-foot pole for your franchise. Mm-hmm. And some teams probably wouldn't touch Durant, not because of his talent, but because he's just been so surly over the last few years. So I think there's a level of desperation, but I also think they might have gotten some clearance or gotten some reassurance that what happened in Boston was a one-off, something that won't happen again, and two, agreeing with Udoka, like, okay, Ime, like, you're going to not be able to have no relationships with anyone in the organization. Everything's on the up and up. We will have someone watching you. Like, it could be a lot of conditions here, like a guy when you sign to an extension or a contract where you've got all these like stipulations of how you can make your money. You got to play in a certain amount of games. You got to, make it all start. Like, there's probably a lot of hoops.
Can't play Call of Duty, can't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Wear a chastity belt.
Yeah, you gotta be. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of conditions to this hire. But if he says he's ready to follow those things and says, hey, I made a mistake, but it's been 6 weeks. I mean, that's the thing. It's not been 6 months. It's been 6 weeks. Like, how has he improved himself? We don't know. What has he done? And therapy is usually not a month.
Yeah, like, one of the biggest things, I don't know if I had an issue with it per se, but I sort of have an issue with the way some people attacked Joe Mazzulla for something he did when he was in college, right? There was a little bit of flack out there for the Celtics hiring Joe Mazzulla after he's had some troubles in his past when he was a college student. And to go from and Joe has done some things throughout the rest of his career to try and amend for that. And he's talked about that. I'm with you. What has the guy done in 6 weeks to reinvent himself to be a better person? If the violation is so bad that the team that just went to the NBA finals with him, and again, he is a hell of a coach, period. The team that went to the NBA finals with him, that transformed their team into this really tough great defensive team with two budding stars on the team and Jason Tatum taking the mega leap to first team All-NBA last year, to say, no, we want nothing to do with this guy. I just have a hard time feeling that you've been rehabilitated in that amount of time. And then we have people that want to give Joe Mazzulla a hard time. Like I just have a problem with the way that's been handled, I think. I don't know. I don't know about you guys, but it's just, there, at some point, Gary, the information has to come out. So again, you talked about closure a little while ago. And I almost feel like there's just so many things involved. It's very sticky, very messy, but there has to be some sort of closure to this thing so we all can move on collectively, correct?
I agree. You would think, but then you get the legal situation going on. You get the Celtics don't want to be sued. They don't want to be sued by Udoka. They don't want to be sued by the person that he was, he was in a relationship with. I mean, they have to be very careful with this. I think they've been told to do that. And they're in a sticky situation themselves. Now, the question is, if you're Celtics, would you have asked for compensation? Hey, I need a first rounder, or 2 second rounders or whatever. I need something for my, what do you do? Or are you just happy you don't have to pay him anymore? And now you're paying, you could try to figure out how to work a deal to make Mazzulla your permanent coach, if that's the direction you want to go in. There's a lot of questions here, and I said, there's so many things out there, but, the Celtics have to at least relate to their players. This is what's going down. There has to be better communication between the organization and the players, because you don't want Marcus saying what he said.
Gary, I bring this up because Jaylen Brown entered into the conversation talking with your colleague, Adam Himmelsbach. Is race a factor in this, in your mind?
I'll just say this. I think there's a level of shock among those of us who are covering the league who are black, that a black coach can mess up so much and come back. This is like Bobby Petrino stuff. This is Rick Pitino stuff here. This is usually reserved for a college coach. Usually black coaches don't get a second chance when they really, they don't generally get a second chance when they lose, but they don't generally get a second chance when they mess up off the floor. So, I think race does play a part, because I think that there was kind of an assumption that, one, Ime is going to have to really wait his turn to come back, and two, other young rising African-American coaches are going to be vetted very hard now for their past, their personal lives, before a team takes a chance on hiring. That still might happen. That still might happen. But I do think race does play a part. I don't know if it's over racism, but there's a level of, I think, that black coaches have to deal with, like what Charles Barkley said years ago, the only time a black coach gets a job, the team's terrible. Jamal Mosley, Chauncey Billups, you look at the coaches that take over, okay, this place is a mess, fix it up in 2 years or you're fired too. So I do think there's a level of kind of wow, it's interesting that Udoka did err, has made his mistakes public, and now 6 weeks later he's a coach, where in other professional sports, Eric Bieniemy, still can't get a head coaching job with the Kansas City, or Byron Leftwich. We revert to the NFL. We see all these managerial hirings in baseball, no blacks, still no blacks in the World Series. Obviously, it tells you much about baseball, but all these, guys can continue, white managers and white coaches can continue to mess up. I mean, I can just only think, Andy Reid's son just literally got jail time for a DUI. No one judges Andy Reid over that. His son had literally permanently hurt a little girl, DUI. He gets 3 years. Was Reid even asked that in his press conference this week? Nope, he's getting ready for the Chiefs. He's getting ready for the Titans game. No one says anything, or we can go to locally. I'm not talking about messing up, but Steve Belichick can get have power in the organization because he's Bill's son. Like, did Steve play in the NFL? Did Steve, what I'm saying? Like, it's just a general good old boys network. So I think Jalen's reference that, like, I'm surprised and pleasantly surprised that a black coach who made an egregious error can be brought back and will be allowed to coach again. Because a lot of us did not think it would happen so fast, obviously. I think there was a level of he'll coach. And I don't know what Matt Barnes, I think I know what Matt Barnes was referring to, some of the rumors that I don't know are true, but I never thought, he'll never coach again. I thought it would take a year or two. But I do think race does play a factor because historically there seems to be more of a harsher scale on black coaches throughout sports than there are white coaches.
Are you, Gary Washburn, NBA columnist and reporter, still digging into this story? Like, you just talked about some of the stuff that you've heard that, you don't know if it's true. We've all heard stuff that maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Are you still, is this a story that you're even interested in breaking, or is this just so deeply personal and sort of off topic that it's like, I'm going to let someone else take this one if all these details are ultimately going to emerge anyhow?
No, it's something you still pursue, yeah, as a reporter, because the question is, who is this man? Who did the Celtics exactly hire? Like, who is Ime Udoka? And I think that's the biggest question. And he's going to have to, he was a very, I've covered a lot of coaches over my years. Ime was a very private, personal man. He was not a friendly guy, wasn't mean or nothing to that effect. He was just,
standoffish.
Yeah, he's just about business. How you doing? You guys saw him in the meeting. He joked here and there. He was not like Missoula. Is you see it, his personality starting to come out. Missoula's more open. Like, Ime was a serious dude, which is fine. I know, we all can be serious at times. Some more serious than others. Most of the time, Udoka was a serious guy. He was no nonsense. He was just focused, but and people thought, wow, that's really great. That's why he's here. That's why he's, was a top candidate. That's why he's in. And so you see that guy that that's the thing that we've all been asking ourselves. Like, you work as a black coach, you work your ass off to get to this level. You didn't have a great NBA career. You're not, because that's the one thing, if you're a black coach and you had an average to below average career or didn't play, the chances of you coaching are not good. Deion Sanders is going to probably get a Power 5 job, because he had to go to Jackson State to do that. Steve Nash never coached a game and got the Brooklyn job. Like, people don't understand kind of the disparity in that. Steve Nash was helping out with the Warriors. And then, hey, Steve, here's the Nets with Kyrie and Durant and James Harden. Hey, handle that. You're smart. Like, people don't
versus someone like a Patrick Ewing who's been,
yes, who couldn't get an NBA job. Right, and it's not doing great at Georgetown. Right. It's a tough job. Georgetown now is not what Georgetown was in the 80s or the early 90s or whatever, but it's a tough job. But yeah, he's not doing great. But the thing is that you look at Ime, he worked his ass off to become from a journeyman player, first generation American, is Nigerian father, gets this job and then loses his mind off the floor. Does some stuff that not even guys who and I said this before, we all know he's not we can go to the Red Sox and see what Francona was in the streets. We all know Francona was hanging out at bars and stuff, not crazy, but people know where Francona was going. We all saw Francona out when he was managing the Sox. We all knew what John Farrell did. This is not anything new, but the person you were with, like this, he kind of lost his mind. And people were like, how the hell would you work so hard? Okay, and you're not getting hired by Charlotte. You're not Jamal Mosley in Orlando. Hey, Jamal, we got a bunch of freaking lottery picks, including Mo Bamba, Jonathan Isaac, and Markelle Fultz. One dude's been out for 2 years. Mo Bamba was a bust, and Markelle Fultz can't shoot. Like, turn us into a playoff team. And they're going to be okay. You got Banchero and say, but like, that's the kind of job, or, hey, Chauncey, go to Portland where, we're about to blow this thing up. And now Portland's playing better. Like, he got a prime job, and then you blow it off like this. So going back to your question about, like, who is this man? What is he about? What makes him tick? Because obviously it's not just basketball. And so that's the mystery, I think, that with Ime Udoka, and that's what he's going to have to change, I think, in Brooklyn. He cannot be that, like, I just keep it business private. I don't talk about my personal life. I don't that was cool when you were in Boston and people thought that you were just like all about hoop. People know now you're not all about basketball. You got, you got another side to you. And so I think, that the story of who this man is, what the Celtics hired, where this come from is definitely an interesting story. And I said, he's a private man. He's a man, he's not a bad, like a good guy. I have one issue with Coach Udoka covering him at all. It was just, you knew he was a serious dude. Doc can make you feel like $1 million. Doc, hey, my man. Hey, you see Doc, you still feel good. You see Doc now, and hey, how you doing? He makes you feel twice as good as you did before. That's Doc. Doc's a talker. Doc's a good guy. Doc's, he's
a media darling, Doc.
Yeah, he sometimes he might stress the truth, or sometimes he might, BS you a little bit. But that was Doc. Brad was dead serious. Brad lived up to everything that he was. Family man, serious about basketball. There was nothing, about Brad that he didn't. This is who I am, and that's who he is, right? Mm-hmm. I'm dead serious. No, I don't have this like bubbly personality. I'm about my family. My wife's my agent. I'm here to help the Celtics win, and that's what you're going to get out of me. And there's some playful sides. He'll joke here and there, but Brad was all about nothing different than what he portrayed publicly. Ime, it's different. So I think people are going to be like, well, who the hell is this guy? I'm sure people who know him are like, man, I didn't know this was going down. Like, and you got other coaches who are like, man, how do you don't blow it like this? You know where you are? You're in Boston. Mm-hmm. You're coaching the Celtics, a landmark, benchmark franchise. The Lakers, the Celtics, if you want to say the Knicks, okay. The Bulls or whatever. Like there's a handful of franchises that are, storied. And this is what you do when you you lose your mind. So I do think there's a mystery there. And he's going to have to open up. Things are going to have to change. Like this is the New York media. So,
he's got page 6 on his tail now.
Yes.
Nick Friedell's going to be there.
Whatever he does in Brooklyn, whatever he does, like, don't go out like, he's going to have to change. And will he admit, hey, I got to change. No more nightlife. No more, I'm about, like, I don't know. Like, that's a good question. Does he think he needs to change? Does he think, guys, that he just made a mistake in judgment of who he decided to have a relationship with, but the Celtics overreacted? Like, is that what he's telling the Nets? The Celtics just lost their minds. Like, I wasn't really at fault. Like, we were fine until they found out, and then they went crazy. Like, is that what he's telling
I'm
you?
in an open relationship. Nia didn't care.
Yes, I'm single because I knew that during the season. Like everybody wants to put him in. He's not married to Nia Long, and we found out during the season that they weren't in a relationship. We found that out. It's nothing for me to write. I'm going to put, in my Celtics notes, I'm going to reveal Udoka's relationship status. It's none of my business. It doesn't affect his job, right? Well, we thought it didn't, but so that's not that. We heard that, and I heard that during the year. Why doesn't he come to more games? Like, I don't think they're together. I think they co-parent, or it's one of those. It's complicated, which is fine.
Right.
Coach can have that. I mean, there's been coaches with completely other families. So there's been coaches who've had the wife and the mistress. Like this is nothing new. But what I also think is that you're gonna have to open yourself up here. And does he feel like he needs to? All these questions will be answered, I'm sure, in coming weeks if he gets his job.
I only have one more on Ime, but in transitioning it to basketball, you talked about it. Like, you got a surly, moody Kevin Durant. You have Kyrie Irving, who, his interest level is always in question. He may or may not be an anti-Semite. And now you have this distraction, obviously, with Ime Udoka. Is he good enough, a good enough head coach based on what we saw last year? It's the 1 year sample. Is he a good enough head coach that he can even come in and solve, the Nets' woes anyhow to put them where everyone feels they belong in the Eastern Conference?
No, because I don't think they have the personnel. They can outscore you, but they got to stop somebody. And so I don't know if he's going to bring the best out of Ben Simmons. I don't know what happens there. They just don't have enough personnel. And then we'll see what happens when they get TJ Warren back, if that ever happens, and Seth Curry is still hurt. Joe Harris is coming off a year off. Like, they got a lot of question marks, but they could be a playoff team and they could maybe get to the second round, but I don't see that resurrection because he doesn't have the athletes. And I'll say this about Kyrie Irving. I don't think Kyrie looked at the movie that he retweeted. Okay. I think that movie, and I haven't seen it, but reading because it's on Amazon Prime.
Didn't he say he did watch it?
I don't think it. First of all, Adam, the movie is 220 minutes. Like, that's like 3 hours. Yeah, that's
nobody's got time
watching that.
It is a chore. Okay.
It's The Irishman, but less interesting.
Yes, it is. It is like binge watching. So, it is a long movie. And secondly, I think that what people don't understand, and maybe this is just the lack of, I don't want to say compassion, of understanding. It sounds like, coming from what I've learned, that Kyrie has embraced Black nationalism. Okay, he's embraced the Muslim religion. He has become more leaning toward Black nationalism. This movie was supposed to kind of show that the Black man, the Black person, was the original person on Earth. Now, I don't know how, I've read some of the lines that were quoted Hitler bad, terrible. Okay. So I can't speak for how anti-Semitic it is, although the Hitler thing just, that's
not
just
great.
Yeah, that's a slam dunk right there. That's anti-Semitic. But instead of just saying, listen, I just want you guys to take a different point of view on who is the original man on Earth. Because knowing some people who are Black nationalists, being familiar, not familiar personally, but having family members or having friends, there's Asiatic Black men. There are people that think that we're Asiatic. There's people that think that Blacks are Jews. There's a lot of beliefs, okay? And obviously, as you guys know, there's a lot of different religions who believe the origin of the Earth is different than, there's the evolution people. There's people that don't believe that dinosaurs ever, like, there's all types of beliefs, okay? You can call people crazy. You can call them misinformed, whatever. If you just are saying you just want people to get a different point of view, then just say that, as opposed to getting defensive. And that's where I think Kyrie probably erred. And I'm not saying he's right. He's made a lot of mistakes. He's, and he gets utterly defensive. And I can't say how anti-Semitic this movie was, although I'm sure it was, in terms of some of the quotes that I've read. But if he just said, listen, I didn't watch it, but I just want people to have a different point of view and learn something different. Because there's a lot of books of Black nationalism. There's a lot of books on how a lot of things happened in this world that are, that you can buy at certain bookstores that are, could be viewed as offensive, or they could be viewed as educational. You know what I'm saying? Like, it all depends. Are they offensive? I'm sure some of them are. There are books that are about slavery that will have N-words all through them. Is that offensive? Yes. Would it be? Would it offer a different perspective? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So I think Kyrie, instead of just saying, listen, I just wanted people to see a different point of view. I don't support this, but it sounds like it's something that I am going to watch. It might have solved the problem instead of him getting ultra defensive. And I think he's going through this personal metamorphosis in terms of Black nationalism, in terms of, that he's ultra defensive, especially to people who aren't Black. And so he's going through a change. And that's what I think he needs to explain, not saying like I'm going through a change, but like, you could just tell the Native American, and then suddenly, he's observing Ramadan, things that I don't know if other media pick up on and think, okay, like he is going through, and there was a lot of athletes in the 1970s who embraced Islam, who changed their names, who went through religious kind of metamorphosis. And I'm not blaming him for that or saying, if he wants to be Muslim, that's fine. He wants to go by certain rules, but one, don't offend anybody. Two, don't embrace anything anti-Semitic that's ridiculous and that's racist. But I think he needs to explain himself better, but I think he gets uncomfortable when he's questioned. And that's where that whole thing went. And I think, honestly, if he just did a one-on-one interview with if you want to talk to somebody and just say, listen, this is the perspective I have. I don't know, people might not agree with me. And I don't think people have to agree with him. I don't think we agree. We all agree with each other's religious beliefs. We all are on the same page. There's a healthy respect we have for each other. It's just like someone's political beliefs. You're not crazy about someone's political beliefs. I might not be crazy about, or you were raised in a religion that taught you one thing. I was raised in a religion that taught me another thing. So I'm going to say you're wrong, or you're going to say I'm wrong. No, we're just going to agree to disagree and have a healthy respect. And maybe even learn about and educate ourselves about what your perspective is and you about mine. This could be a teaching moment. But Kyrie, instead of doing that, decided to, get defensive and then say, deny that he was promoting it and that type of thing. So it's a touchy subject. And I think it's not as black and white as, oh, he's anti-Semitic. I do think that the film was anti-Semitic and had anti-Semitic references, but I don't know if Kyrie either read the book, because it was a book in 2015, and it was a movie in 2018. Did he really read that? And was he just trying to say, this sounds like a movie that you guys, my followers, need to check out? Is that promotion? I don't know. I do think it's partially promotion, but I also think he probably didn't watch
Well, unfortunately, it's sort of the whole like the people who, I don't know if people still do this, but the people who used to put in their like Twitter profile, like, retweets are not endorsements. When your brand is as big as it is that of a professional athlete, and in particular NBA players, and you have as many followers and whatever, Twitter, Instagram, everywhere else, and you put something out there, and unless you sort of qualify it as this is not an endorsement, it's just assumed to be one. And that's, fair or unfair. That's just kind of the reality of the world. I got an idea, guys, about 45 minutes in. Let's talk about the Celtics for a few. They're 4-3, as I mentioned, and sort of, Gary, this is just where my brain goes sometimes. In an alternate universe, they could be 7-0, right? I mean, they've lost 2 games in overtime. They blew a 19-point lead against the Bulls in a game that they lost. Like they could be undefeated right now. It doesn't mean they're perfect or anywhere near perfect. They have issues. We've documented some of them off the top with the Joe Mazzulla lack of calling a timeout, and there are obviously injury concerns. Not having Rob Williams has contributed to inability to close games late or stop opposing big men on the other side, the issues on the glass, defensive issues overall, which certainly, last year, number 1 defensive team in the NBA by a wide margin. This year, they're a bottom 10 team, and that might even be kind the way they have looked so far defensively. So how much of this is just, it's early, you don't have Rob, you're adjusting to a new head coach, so don't sort of get lost. It's all a little bit overblown. They'll figure it out versus real concerns to you right now.
Yeah, I think there's concerns of the defensive lapses, and some of the just what I saw last year, coasting when you're up. They're up 66-54. They looked like they were in total control. Cleveland couldn't hit a shot, and then here comes that, and we can go on the Mazzulla timeout thing. Then suddenly it was a quick 4-0 run. Then it was a 6-0 run. Then you're like, okay, you could see it. They've cut the lead in half. It's 66-60. You still have control. And then what happens? They score. They get within. They tie it, and then Mazzulla calls a timeout. I think it was a 10-0 or 12-0 run. And then suddenly Cleveland's back in it, and they never gain control of the game again. I think that the defensive lapses are a concern. To what the hell were they doing with Garland in the first quarter? They just let him get real comfortable. It was his first game in 2 weeks, and they just let him get really comfortable. And then what happens? He drops 14 points in the first quarter, 17, and then finished with 29. He didn't dominate throughout the game, but you just got him comfortable. You fell behind by 11, then you had to claw back. And then Mitchell took over when it counted. I think they've played a team right now in Cleveland that's felt good. So 2 overtime losses. I'm not going to be like, oh, they're a mess right now. They easily, if that foul is called on Tatum's dunk, they might win that game. If they make a couple of plays in last week, if Tatum hits that shot or Jalen hits that shot, we're at the buzzer, we're talking different. The Chicago game, I felt like the bench let them down. And I just think that the bench has got to improve. Brogdon was really bad in the second half. He couldn't, turnovers, missed layups. He had a couple of shots after that. But I just think altogether, they're just still trying to figure it out. And the defense has got to improve. And then Mazzulla's got to review, when the hell do I call a timeout? Because that's the second or third or fourth time that's happened. It happened in Chicago. It happened against Washington when they cut a 51-27 lead to 11 by halftime. 51-27, you jump on them. You try to extend it to 30. You put them away. You do not let, you make sure we don't lose this sizable lead. And I thought they had Cleveland down 66-54. Then Cleveland started getting the ball in the paint. And then here comes Mobley. They were 66-60. And I thought, perfect time to call a timeout. You see the tide is turning, but let them play through it. And it's just the Celtics aren't good at that. Maybe other teams are good at playing through it. The Celtics aren't one of those teams. They let runs be runs. So I think that it's some reason for concern. But, but the schedule doesn't get easier. Chicago, then the Knicks, then Memphis. then they got a couple with Detroit and whatever, and then Denver comes in. So they got some challenges, but I think they're okay. But I think that they got definitely some improvements to make.
Yeah, I feel way better now than I did last year, obviously, considering last year they went 2-5 to start the year. And I thought the defensive lapses last year were even worse. Last year, it felt like just a lot of miscommunications and guys getting beat backdoor and guys getting open looks at the rim. It was like really frustrating. Some of the defensive struggles have come, because some teams are hot. Like, I go back to that Chicago game. DeRozan hit a bunch of really pull up, tough twos, like with guys contested in his face. And that's DeMar DeRozan's game. He just hits tough shots like that. Like, it's you just gonna have to tip your cap sometimes. They've done a good job, protecting the rim for the most part. They've done a good job, forcing teams to take shots that they want them to take. Part of that is, some teams make shots, but some of that is, they don't communicate all the time. But I do feel better about just the overall general direction of where this team is headed. Tatum looks focused, for the most part, right? Jaylen Brown looks focused. The team makes sense. And obviously without Rob, you can see where, okay, if Rob's here, this is a little bit different, but you're also banking on Rob being 100% healthy. I just feel, again, 4-3 after 7 games against an albeit pretty tough schedule to start. I mean, they've played a lot of really tough teams. So it's not like they've been beaten up on Orlando the entire season. They've been playing some teams that have playoff either aspirations or like Cleveland is really good. Like Mitchell has been exactly what they needed to help out Garland a little bit. That's going to be a team that's going to be at, a top 4 seed probably by the end of the year. We'll see. But, I think Boston learning a new, going through another first year head coach with this team, it's going to take its time. I've been more pleasantly surprised and I've been disappointed, I guess I'll say, Gary. I'm not quite sure if people are with me or not, but I think it's hard for me to look at this team and say, yeah, like there's some things they have to work out, but I like my general overall feeling at the end of the day is like, there are good bones here, right? Like last year, coming off the Nets to disaster in the playoffs, not opening the season well with the high hopes of being a good defensive team. They weren't good defensively. Like at least this team, for the most part, like their offense is really good. Like offensively, they don't seem to. I mean, yes, teams do struggle, but offensively, they seem like they know what they're doing most of the time. They get good shots. They're getting to the free throw line a little bit more. Tatum's taking a leap. They're doing a bunch of stuff better offensively. So I think there are things to tune up, fine tune as every team has to. But I don't foresee like this team will be there at the end of the year. Whether they're a top 2 seed, we'll see. But I feel very comfortable saying that the Celtics play and there will be a top 4 team in the East. I'm not sweating that at all right now. I don't think it's a hot take though.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think they'll be fine. I think they're a good team. I think what's interesting, Gary, about the Cavs though is so this is a team that coming into this year, I think that like people around the NBA can just sort of hear Cleveland Cavaliers and you think like post LeBron Cleveland, like sort of a dumpster fire. There's no talent there. And, they're not a team you got to take seriously. And then obviously you look at their roster and you think about what they did in surprising a lot of people last year. And all of a sudden you start to hear they might be one guy away. And they're more than plucky up and comers in the Eastern Conference. And then they get Donovan Mitchell, as Evan outlined. He's just been a revelation for them since coming over, from Utah. And now you watch these 2 games, 2 overtime wins in which he has exploded in both against the team that last year was the class of the Eastern Conference, at least throughout the playoffs anyway. Say what you will about the regular season, but in the playoffs, this was the team representing the East, the Boston Celtics, and the Cavs have now beaten them twice in a couple of narrow games. And, I coming into the season, I would have put them as a top 4 or 5 team in the East. So it's not like they're blowing my mind. They were always, right there in the conversation, but doing what they're doing so far, 6-1, I think to this point after that latest win, is this a team that's more than holding its own? Is this a team that you can confidently say like, man, like they could come out of the East. Like they could, forget the Celtics, forget the Nets, forget the Bucks, the Sixers, if the Sixers put it together. Like this is a team that could actually emerge this year.
Yeah, I think they have a chance. It reminds me though, guys, of last year. Remember how hot the Bulls started And
injuries killed the Bulls.
Yeah, and then they just tailed like with injuries, but then they just went into a rut. So I just think like we have to be a little bit more, a little bit calm, a little bit patient on whether the Cavs are continuing, because obviously we're 7 games into the season. I like what the Cavs bring to the table. I'm not crazy about their bench, but I think they have good role guys. I mean, I do like, Love's playing, Dean Wade. I thought about a couple of plays, but you have 3 or 2.5 scores. LeVert, I think, is a little inconsistent, although obviously if you play the Celtics every night, he'd be an all-star. But and then I think the Mobley-Allen combination is lethal in terms of defensively or whatever. So they're a good young team, but it's all about maintaining that through a whole regular season. Right now they're hot. And I said before, like, I think the Celtics defensively, like, you just can't give up. You can't let Garland get so comfortable so quickly. I just thought that changed. That was the tone of the game that changed everything, that put him behind. And then once Garland cooled off, then Mitchell got hot. And that, and I just think they have to look at some of the mistakes they made. Marcus Smart taking that 17-footer continues to, I feel contact. I'm going to get the shot up. I don't know when the last time he's gotten that call late in overtime where he just fired up, just wasting possessions. It says sometimes ill-advised 3-pointers, just because you're open, you don't have to fire it up. Make the extra pass. There's things that I feel like they could have very easily won that game and probably should have won that game. I think they were up, 96-92, and then allow like a 7-0 run or whatever. And it was just like that, the ruts that they get offensively, the turnovers. But the Cavaliers, I think, are good. I think they're they're only going to get better, but you also have to maintain it throughout a long regular season, right? Let's see, would Cleveland go, what happens when they go out west? What happens when they face, the tougher opponents? Can they win consistently on the road without, but I think Cleveland now, to me, is replaced pretty much like Brooklyn, and maybe even Philadelphia as like a top 3, because you put Milwaukee. If you want to include the Celtics in there, you can. We'll see what happens like with Atlanta and other teams, but I think Cleveland definitely top 3 right now.
Gary, last thing I have for you before we let you go, we got to talk a little bit about the Celtics beat, whatever we call this thing, Fantasy Hoops League. Your bragging Dragons, my man. They're 0-2. You're getting creamed by Sean Devaney so far this week. A lot of week left, but man,
look at my roster, man. Hold on here.
No, but listen, and pull up your roster. That's fine. But
this is the problem here.
No, okay, I'll tell you the problem. You can point to injuries, but I'll tell you the problem. If you just set your lineup on a daily basis, man,
yeah,
that's what I mean. You 1-1 week 1, so you'd be 1-1. And if you use your IR spots, put guys on injured reserve and pick up a free, like you might be undefeated right now.
Look, I got who is it here? Kawhi hasn't played in a week now.
Put him on IR. Pick a guy up.
Yeah, like I'm in trouble here.
Well, my problem is I got a bunch of guys that are day to day. So what am I supposed to do when Joel Embiid is day to day? Am I not supposed to put Joel Embiid in my starting lineup? It's like
Zion missed a week.
Yeah.
John Morant had missed like 2 games, both games in Utah with like a, sickness. Like I'm just.
I feel Garrett.
By the way, I've Ben Simmons.
I'm 0-2. I'm 0-2.
Look for a trade. Get rid of Simmons.
It's all.
So yeah, I'll try to make some. I'll try to make some improvements.
That's right. We just need you to set that lineup, if nothing else. That's right.
Yeah, I got used to the daily grind.
That's right. That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about.
I felt for picking Anthony Davis because, like, You're just sitting there in like the 6th round. I'm sitting there. I'm like, okay, at some point, like somebody's going to take Anthony Davis, and I should have known better. It's really going to bother me because I knew better, and it's a bunch of guys on my team that I should have known better. But I don't know. My team, every fantasy team I'm in is just a nightmare. So that's why, again, as I explained to Greeny last week, like there's a reason why I passed on Tatum for Joel Embiid, because I've had the worst luck with fantasy, and I could not burden Jason Tatum with that.
It was out of respect for the greater good with the Boston Celtics.
And Embiid's like in and out of the lineup right now, so perfect for me,
We're all day to day, aren't we? Next time Gary comes on with us, he's going to be riding like a 3-game winning streak. He's going to be riding hot, man.
We'll see.
All right. Well, we look forward to. I actually am in a deranged, twisted way. Very much looking forward to Ime Udoka coaching the Brooklyn Nets, and in particular that introductory press conference. And I will be watching when it is televised locally, and you are in the crowd asking questions. All the ones that we discussed here on this show, I look forward to those being, well, asked anyway. I don't know if they'll be answered, but they'll be asked. And, we'll see what direction everything goes. And hopefully the Celtics can put a little run together here too. But Gary, thanks for hopping on as always, man.
Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, Gary Washburn, Evan Valenti. I'm Adam Kaufman. This has been Celtics Beat. Here's to more wins and more actual Celtics talk next show around. We'll see you.